Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on X at Movies TV Mad and on Instagram and on Threads at Movies TV Mad X. A very warm welcome to Tuesday's edition of the DC Universe Daily. And today we're talking about one of my favourite Superman adaptions of all time, Smallville. It's something I'm so familiar with that I didn't have to research, which is great, which is going to be a very comfortable, exciting video for me. As we continue on the road to James Gunn's Superman movie, we're going to be looking at previous adaptions of Superman. And today I'm very excited to be talking about the greatest show on earth. I was obsessed with Smallville. When I say I was obsessed with Smallville, I would think Smallville from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to bed. This was the most important thing in my life. Now that sounds like, Mick, get a life. Mick, you're pathetic. But it was. I was obsessed with Smallville. The truth is, I still am. I'm obsessed with Superman. Again, Mick, get a life. I don't care. It's the way I am. It's the way I feel. I love Superman. And Smallville is one of my most favourite adaptions of the hero. Of my hero. Smallville was amazing. It did a very genuine, honest job at adapting the Superman myth. Now, nothing made by human hands, as I say every day on these videos, is perfect. Smallville is flawed because it's made by people. You know, it's not made by robots, but Smallville was amazing. I remember when I first heard they were making a TV show about a young Clark Kent. Oh, not another Superboy. Why can't I get an awesome epic Superman movie? It's not fair. One Sunday, I'm hungover, I'm in my bed, I'm flicking through the channels. I go to channel 4, something they call T4. They used to call T4, short for Teen 4. Then on the kind of description below, it said Smallville. I said, what? Smallville? That's where Superman grew up. Surely not. Surely this is not a show set in the place where Superman grew up. Then I see this bald guy. Oh my God, please, that's got to be Lex Luthor. It's Lex Luthor. That's bloody Lex Luthor. This is amazing. It wasn't even the pilot. I think it was the second, third or fourth episode. As soon as I saw it, I saw this charm about it. It was amazing. It was charming. And it really did a great job, especially in the early days, of adapting these iconic characters. Basically, Smallville is the, step-by-step, character-driven journey of how Clark Kent becomes Superman and how Lex Luthor becomes this evil megalomaniac. Lex Luthor is a full-time character in Smallville for the first 7 seasons. And from the pilot to, I suppose, the episode called Descent in season 7, this is the journey of how Lex Luthor becomes the evil megalomaniac we know and love. But when we first meet Lex in Smallville, he's nowhere near being an evil megalomaniac. He's a rich man's son. Probably you could say that Lionel Luthor is an evil, wealthy man when we first meet him. But even he goes through an evolution. Lionel Luthor, Smallville was the first time we ever got to know and met the character that's Lex Luthor's father. He plays a huge role on this show, played by iconic actor from the stage and screen and animation, John Glover. You may remember him from Gremlins. You may remember him from Richard Donner's Scrooged, starring alongside the great Bill Murray. John Glover has been there and done it all. Smallville was developed for television by Alfred Gough and Miles Miller. One of the strengths of Smallville creatively, that it was a show built on writing teams. Gough and Miller, who developed the show, as I said. Salders and Peterson, Slavkin and Swimmer. We had married couples writing the show together. it was a double act effort, and I think this was the strength of Smallville. Also, a lot of the writers on the show were very young and inexperienced, and I really think that helped the innocence of the show, especially in the early days. We even got comic book writing legend Jeff Loeb involved in the show. Not me, our Miles did, right? He wrote Superman for All Seasons, a very famous graphic novel that actually Smallville's adaptation is based upon a lot. And he worked on the show, I think, from around seasons, I think he was there from the first season, maybe the second season, but I think he hung around until maybe series 5. I don't know if he was around in season 6, but anyway, Jeff was a consultant in the writer's room. They had a very healthy writer's room. I do love the writer's room dynamic. Anyone who's been in a writer's room before will tell you what a great dynamic that is, as long as you've got no arseholes in the room, of course. But Smallville's concept was kind of a Beverly Hills 90210 idea. It was kind of a Dawson's Creek. It was a pre-Superman story set within that idea. And basically Clark Kent is Dawson. Basically Clark Kent, is Brandon from 90210, Brandon Walsh from 90210. He's Brandon and Dawson, if you like, but he's from another planet. So it was a very interesting way to tell a pre-Superman story. And when I first watched it, I wasn't sure, are we just going to stay with Clark as a young boy on the farm? Is he ever going to become Superman on the show? It became very clear from series 2 that this was a step-by-step journey, not only for Clark, but for Lex. And it's that facet that helped Smallville last for 10 seasons. The second season was pivotal because instead of remaining with the concept of the Freak of the Week, which I loved, by the way, some people hated, but I thought it was an interesting concept because Clark gets to fight these mutants infected by kryptonite. Because the concept of Smallville is that Clark arrives followed by a kryptonite meteor shower. The charred remains of the planet Krypton that have followed him they didn't literally follow him, but the meteor shower arrives on the day of his spaceship. It's an interesting story. The meteors kill Lana Lang's parents. That's not how the original comic did things. So Clark's scared to tell Lana where he's from and who he is, so he has to lie to her. He lies to all of his friends. Clark Kent has to lie to protect his secret and protect others from his secret too. Within Smallville, some people even die knowing Clark's secret. Smallville was very creative. But what Smallville truly did, it reinvigorated my love for Superman. That flame was still there, but the flame was dimming. As you all know, I fell in love with Superman from the moment I saw the first movie I ever saw as a young boy. Superman the movie. But I wasn't so obsessed before Smallville came on, but Smallville reinvigorated that love for the character I had as a small boy. It got me wanting to research the comics, as I've never been a big comic book reader. I don't really read books either. I don't have the concentration. For me, it's about TV, it's about film. That's where I'm at. Judge me as much as you want. It doesn't make me any less of a DC fan. But anyway, Smallville became my life. It became very important to me because it was really at its peak when I was living alone in shared accommodation, where really I had nothing or no one and I barely had any money. It was probably one of the lowest stages of my life, and the characters of Smallville, the show, really helped me keep going. As I keep on saying, Superman has always been there in different stages of my life when I've needed him, and that's why I love this character so much. Smallville did something that I didn't expect, because Smallville came at a time when the entertainment industry was changing. All of a sudden, money was being taken away from the cinematic entertainment industry and being funneled into television. All of a sudden, shows like Smallville and 24 and Prison Break and Lost were like movies, expensive movies. All the people working in movies were suddenly working on television. Cinematographers actually working on shows like Lost and Smallville and Alias was very, very important. And Smallville really was the beginning of this new era of entertainment, because there used to be a big snobbery about TV, and it was all about films and, TV. TV actors didn't really show up much on film. Oh no, you're a television actor. It's a bad attitude, right? But that's how it used to be. All of a sudden, TV became the place where the real quality was being made. And Smallville was part of that fundamental change. Smallville did an outstanding job of adapting Clark Kent. He felt like the Clark Kent I always knew, kind, pure, but the difference to Smallville's Clark Kent as a young boy, he's a teenager, so he's utterly flawed. He makes mistakes, like when he wears a red kryptonite ring and he becomes almost evil in series 2, when he puts it on and leaves Smallville at the end of series 2 because Martha loses a baby. And it's kind of Clark's fault because he tries to blow up his spaceship, because that's another thing we get. We get Terrence Stamp as the voice of Jor-El. Terrence Stamp, General Zod from Superman the movie and Superman 2, playing the disembodied voice of Jor-El. And oh boy, didn't he do a great job. And the whole idea here is that he's giving Clark these trials. So when he tells Clark he's got to conquer Earth, he doesn't really want him to conquer Earth. It's a trial to see what Clark does. And Clark pushes away from that because he's a good person and he's being raised by the salt of the earth. We find out in a flashback episode that actually Jor-El did visit Earth. And it's when he met Jonathan Kent's father, Hiram, that he decided, or maybe did he, he didn't know that Krypton was dying there, but maybe at a later date on Krypton he thought to himself, I've got to send my son. I'm going to send him to Earth because I've been there and it's a good planet for him. And I went there and I got powers. That's important. He can become a hero. And I'm going to send him here to this family because, Hiram Kent was a good man. So I'm banking on the fact that his son will be also a good man. So Smallville was fascinating, but it did break so much of Superman canon. Now, I'm not a gatekeeper. If you change something about something that I love, as long as it's a really good idea, I don't mind. A few episodes ago of the DC Universe Daily, we spoke about the Superman radio show of the 1940s, how they created concepts that are still part of Superman's mythology today. So breaking canon and changing things around a famous iconic universe or character isn't a bad thing. If it's a good idea, it's a good idea. As long as your intentions and goals are genuinely to upscale the universe and character and it's part of world building, I'm fine with it. And this is what Smallville did. Smallville to me was quickly becoming an Elseworld story. I think to the people making it, they didn't think outside the box in terms of it being an Elseworld story. I think that's why they killed off Jimmy Olsen and decided they'd have an age-appropriate Jimmy Olsen in the series finale. But for me, once you've got him there, you've got him there. He was a great version of Jimmy Olsen, and it worked for me. Now, in the Smallville pilot, we were introduced to a character called Chloe Sullivan, played by the really talented Alison Mack. Now, Alison Mack broke the law. She's paid her price, and I have no ill feelings towards her because Alison Mack, during the Smallville era, was an acting hero, an artistic hero to me, and I looked up to Chloe Sullivan. Chloe Sullivan was the editor of the Smallville High paper, the Smallville Torch. Basically, she was Lois Lane without being Lois Lane, and she also ended up being Lois Lane's cousin. But she was brilliant. She, as I say, she was literally had all the character traits of Lois, because Lois, DC wouldn't allow Alan Miles to introduce Lois from the pilot. I think they wanted to do that, but they said no, there's certain things they couldn't do. They couldn't have the Fortress of Solitude from the early seasons, and they couldn't use Lois Lane, so they thought, all right, we'll have Chloe Sullivan, who's basically Lois Lane, but actually isn't, but has all the character traits. And she was an outstanding character, and Clark works with her in the Smallville Torch. So Clark Kent is being an investigative reporter at school in a pre-Superman show. Isn't that cool? With this character who's got all the character traits of Lois Lane, but she isn't actually Lois Lane. I mean, personally, I would have made her Lois Lane, right? But anyway, they brought in someone else to be Lois Lane, and that's okay too. So as well as having this interesting concept of Dawson's Creek and 90210 with a pre-Superman story, the first series kind of was inspired a little bit by X-Files, because kind of the Meteor Freak stories were very X-Filey. And the guy, Mark Snow, who composed all the music for X-Files, composed the score for Smallville from around seasons 1 to around 5 or 6, I think. And then his understudy, Louis Fibre, a brilliant composer. I enjoyed his music when he took over even more than Mark's, but I love Mark Snow as a composer, don't get it twisted. But this show was so special. But you know what I loved about Smallville? It didn't become a superhero show from the moment it aired, from the pilot. It earned the right to become a superhero show. So in the early seasons, I think from the moment they're in high school, from series 1 to 4, it's a coming of age story. But then slowly but surely, they build up a pre-Superman Justice League. They bring in comic book legends Jeff Johns to write a Legion episode, which was absolutely fantastic. A movie event called Absolute Justice. Outstanding. Where kind of a defrocked Justice Society meets this pre-Superman Justice League from the Smallville TV show. We even get a Booster Gold episode from Jeff Johns. Tom Welling played Clark Kent from series 1 to 10, and that could have changed very quickly when there were contractual problems with Tom. I think he was negotiating in season 8 for 1 or 2 more seasons, and that was a difficult contract negotiation. Tom Welling was an outstanding Clark Kent, but he was very raw and inexperienced when we first saw him in the pilot. There's no question, you could tell he had very little experience, but he became a great actor on the show. More importantly than that, he never embarrassed the character of Superman after working hours. He always had a good reputation. He was a married man, he had a family. That was important. Tom worked very hard. He was in every episode. He was in most of the scenes. Doing that isn't easy, and he did that for a decade. There's proper work in making a TV show. It just doesn't turn up on our TV sets just like that. But he was an excellent Clark Kent. He was Superman for 10 years. No, he only became Superman, right? Yes, he only became Superman in the finale, and there's some negative things to be said about how he refused to wear the costume and things like that. But he was a great Clark Kent. So I don't hold that against Tom. By the way, I have issues with the final 3 seasons, creatively, narratively. I have issues with the series finale. With me, I hate endings. I don't normally like final seasons of anything, and I normally don't like series finales of anything, because I hate endings. I hate them. But ultimately, even with the warts and the flaws, Smallville was great from beginning, middle to end. You have the first 4 seasons and it reinvents itself from seasons 5 to 8. Then it reinvents itself for its final 3 seasons. It's amazing. It's a beginning, middle and end story about how Clark Kent becomes Superman. You have cameos from Superman actors, from other actors and actresses who were in Superman movies. Dean Cain, Terry Hatcher. In series 4, they finally got the green light from DC Comics to introduce Lois Lane. An unknown female actor named Erica Durance was cast as Lois. Now, I was a bit skeptical about having Lois Lane in the pre-Superman era of Clark's life, because I was fine with all the canon they broke before, but I thought, is this a ratings grab? Is this a step too far? Is this going to work? Should they have done what they did with Perry they brought in Perry in season 3. For one episode, they brought him again, I think in season 9, and I think we heard his voice in the series finale. And he was brilliant. He was absolutely fantastic. Actually, that actor was married to Annette O'Toole, who played Martha Kent in Smallville. And she played Lana Lang in Superman 3, where I got a big crush on her. I was so happy she was playing Martha in Smallville. But I was very skeptical about Lois Lane being in Smallville. But as soon as I see that first scene, and Erica's trying to start that cigarette, and she changes her mind, her mum died of cancer in the show, I was in love with her. I'm not as in love with her, but in love with her as Lois Lane. She was amazing from the beginning. Like Michael's interpretation of Lex Luthor, she just felt like Lois Lane would be as a young woman. Unlike Chloe Sullivan, she wasn't interested in journalism when we first meet her. She's come to Smallville to investigate Chloe's murder. Now, Chloe, spoiler alert, no, actually, I'm not going to tell you. I'm not actually going to tell you that. Because some of you may have not watched, maybe you're a Superman fan that didn't bother watching Smallville. Go watch it. I think you can watch it on Amazon Prime. Go and check it out. If you find it slow at first, persevere. It's an amazing show. It's one of the greatest adaptions of Superman of all time. And I adore it. It really was an amazing show. And the VFX on the show is some of the best Superman adaptation VFX you will ever see. This was a TV show. Nobody knew how they were going to make this show. They were making it up as they went along. The contract for the VFX went to Entity FX, a local kind of VFX company. But they did such an amazing job. We had so many great visual iconic effects in Smallville. I remember the episode when the Fortress of Solitude rose. I remember the series 4 finale when Clark puts the stones together. I like the idea of Clark actually having to earn the right to have the knowledge of the universe, which is what the Fortress of Solitude really is. So he's suddenly in the snow, he throws it, and then it goes to, and then the gem, well, it looks like a diamond when he puts it together, is going towards the camera. It blacks out and it goes, to be continued. You know the fortress is going to rise in the next episode, which was going to be the Series 5 premiere. It was so exciting. That summer, I just could think about Smallville. And what was exciting about Season 5 of Smallville, we were getting a Superman movie at the same time, while Series 5 was going to finish or air, whatever. We had Smallville, and we were going to have Bryan Singer's Superman Returns. That was the peak of my Superman fandom. I was so excited. And I couldn't contain myself. When that Series 5 premiere came up, I had to watch it as soon as it aired. And it was amazing. The episode was called Arrival. We saw the fortress rise. It looks like the Fortress of Solitude from Dick Donner's Superman. And inside it pretty much looks like John Barry's design. That was great. They did use inspirations from other kind of adaptions sometimes. And that was one of the things they did. It was amazing. Then we got this kind of Kryptonian villains like we did in Superman 2 in the same episode. So it was so good. Clark would meet different DC heroes within Smallville. Impulse, which is basically in the comics a version of the Flash. I think actually Impulse is Barry Allen's son in some of the iterations of the Flash. For some reason, they weren't allowed to give us Barry Allen in Smallville, but we got the Impulse. We got Cyborg. I nearly forgot his name. We got Cyborg before Ray Fisher. Sadly, the actor who played him passed away. He was great as well, and they formulated this Justice League. Then in Series 6, we would meet Justin Hartley playing Oliver Queen, the Green Arrow. Way before you even heard of Stephen Amell as Arrow, we got it. If it wasn't for Green Arrow on Smallville, then the Arrow TV show would never have happened. And the Green Arrow we got on Smallville was outstanding. They used him as their version of Batman because for some reason they weren't allowed to use Batman. I understand why, but they weren't allowed to use Batman. So they kind of used Oliver Queen as a de facto Bruce Wayne. Basically, he is a de facto Bruce Wayne because at the time, everyone called Oliver Queen a Bruce Wayne Batman ripoff. with a bit more fun. With everyone used to laugh at Green Arrow in the early days of his inception in the comics, but he was great on Smallville. He was a playboy. Justin is a very attractive actor. Even me as a straight guy saying that, he's a good-looking dude, right? I'm definitely straight. If I wasn't, I'd be proud of it, but I'm just saying I'm straight. Anyway, moving on. As Ross said in the Friends pilot, I think the word you're looking for is anyway. And yeah, so he was a great version of Oliver Queen. And, in Series 6, he was a guest star. But then, as we went from Series 8 to 10, he was a full-time cast member. And that was great. Because basically, if you like, he was pretty much the leader of that Justice League, the kind of pre-Superman Justice League. So they used him as this Bruce Wayne type, and he was amazing. He really was. So suddenly, if you go from the pilot episode of Smallville to these older episodes of Smallville, you see that Smallville has evolved as a show. We think back to the early seasons, and now there's a Justice League. That's insane. Chloe is running the Watchtower. That's right. We actually had a Watchtower in Smallville. This is where this pre-Superman, Justice League would meet up and, know where the missions are. And Chloe even gave them nicknames. It was amazing. The achievements of Smallville cannot be counted, cannot be measured. It really wasn't just a great Superman adaptation, pre-Superman adaptation. It's a great adaptation of a universe, of a DC universe. You could argue it's with a smaller budget, they did a better job than the DCEU did. That's not me saying I didn't like the Snyderverse before you start. That's me saying they actually got to build up a universe, right? And without them building that universe, we would never have got Arrowverse and, all those crossovers, which were great as well. Arrowverse was good for a small time, until it became a little bit problematic, creatively and narratively, and for other reasons, current day reasons, by the way. But Smallville was made before the current day issues in entertainment. It wasn't affected. Smallville was a beautiful time. It was a moment where I remembered why I fell in love with Superman in the first place. It made me fall in love with him again. Because Tom Welling's version of this character shows you why you love this character. I love it when he's wearing the red jacket and the blue t-shirt. His Superman colours. He can't wear the cape and the tights and the S in the show because it's a pre-Superman story. I get that. The series finale, I suppose, isn't bad. It focuses on Clark and Lois getting married. It focuses on Darkseid coming and Clark having to fight the darkness that's coming to Earth through Darkseid. I don't think the show had the budget to do Darkseid, and it became a bit of a problem with Darkseid Lionel. But, I think it was an honest finale, and it tried its best to finish Smallville in the right way. We don't actually see him wearing the suit properly, but he does tear open his shirt at the end on the roof of the Daily Planet with John Williams' Superman fame, and he's about to fly off somewhere and save some people, and it's a great ending. He does wear the suit, we just don't see it, but in a great moment, we see Jonathan Kent's ghost in the Fortress of Solitude hand Clark the Superman costume, which is actually the costume from Superman Returns. They didn't design their own costume. I don't think they had the budget for it, because it's not just about the materials, it's about having a costume designer who can do that as well. That's an expense, unfortunately. It's a TV budget, and that was sad. But still, the Superman Returns costume was fine for Smallville. It worked. I think, ultimately, even with my complaints, even with the flaws of the show, everything's got flaws, by the way. Nothing is unflawed. Nothing is perfect, right? We can nitpick all day. But Smallville was sensational. And as we build up, as we go to on this road together to James Gunn's Superman, we're going to be looking at different interpretations of Superman in television, maybe in animation, definitely in film. These are the things that made me a Superman fan to this day. I keep away from the debates between Snyder fans and other fans. I keep away from that. I'm not interested. You know what I love. You know what I love, and I try and keep away from what I hate. I am not interested. I'm not interested in saying that James Gunn's Superman's going to be the best thing ever or the worst thing ever, because I'm not Nostradamus and I don't know. And that's okay. Being excited like this, like we're doing together every single day is fine. Hurting each other or abusing each other over a movie isn't fine.